I guess I'm kind of figuring it out more what my main point of my podcast is and all, and what my thing is. And I think it is that I'm also kind of figuring out what my artist statement is more. And I feel like it is, this is going to sound cheesy, or it's kind of a cheesy thing, but I think that's okay because I feel like that's what sells. Artwork for me, my art is, I feel like I'm most myself. I feel the most at home in my skin. I feel kind of closest to God in some ways when I'm painting, when I'm doing my art. There's just that feeling that you get kind of in that zone. There's a reason that I do my artwork, and that is kind of it. It's that I can't really do anything else. Well, not that I can't do anything else, but I feel like that's kind of what I was made for. So that feeling, that kind of the reason why I do it, also coupled with like why I like art. I've kind of alluded to it before, but I was listening to a podcast a while back about some lady who studied octopuses, and she was doing this series on, she was actually doing like a, what's it called? Like a class of sorts with people where it was like how to become a cephalopod, or how are we not like a cephalopod, like an octopus. My first knee-jerk reaction was like probably most people's, was like, what the like, but what I love about art is that it can be weird like that, or even more weird. And I love just disengaging that part of your brain that kind of discounts stuff like that. And it's like, oh, that's weird. And just put down those walls for a second and just listen to what they have to say and look at what their art says and does. And then you glean from it what you will. So I love talking about that stuff too, and all things art. So that's kind of what I want to get into with you too more, is because I see you as an artist, but you also work with a lot of artists. So I want to see, first of all, your artist journey, how you feel about art, what you do with art, and any stories that you want to go over.
Sure.
Okay. So that being said, welcome to the show.
Hello, and welcome to Oh for the Love of Art, where, well, do you like art? Do you like talking about art? Join us. We'd love to have you.
First of all, introduce yourself as much as you want to. Go into what you do in the art world, if you are in the art world now, but more importantly, tell us what you consider your art form to be, if you do have something specifically. Like, what's your medium that you like to work in?
Yeah, my name's Steven Fournier. Currently master printer at Flying Horse Editions in Orlando, Florida, part of UCF. And I mean, I think, my journey in art has kind of led me to a place where, in a lot of ways, I feel more like a craftsman than an artist specifically. I think I think it's something I've come to over time, where I went to school for art and initially didn't know what that was going to mean for me in the long term. I applied to school with the thought that I would do graphic design because it seemed like the most practical application of the arts at the time. And then once I was in school, I feel like I started to get tempted more and more by fine arts and wanted to do painting and multidisciplinary art and things like that. But then there was always this practical side of me that was like, I should do something that I could benefit from financially in the end. So I think over time,
That's the pull.
yeah, I think over time, it was a battle a little bit during college of trying to decide what I wanted to do. And where I ended up was in illustration as my major, because it seemed like a balance at the time of the practical and the romantic, I guess. So it gave me the technical training that I was looking for, but also gave me a little bit more of the business side of the arts and how I could benefit on that side. But as I went on and on, I feel like there's different things that came up, mostly with elective classes that I was taking. I got really excited about woodworking, and I started taking a lot of classes in the fine woodworking department at our school, and then started taking some printmaking classes and got really excited about that.
What school did you attend?
I went to the University of the Arts in Philadelphia, which is recently defunct. just shut down
Really?
this year.
But, so what do you have your degree in?
I got my degree. It's a BFA, Bachelor in Fine Arts, focusing in illustration.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So 2 questions. We'll start there first. Where were you? So you were eventually ended on illustration. What was your dream of doing with that? Or did you have one?
I mean, a lot of things that were inspiring me at the moment when I was in illustration and where I thought I'd like to be working is things like, book cover design. A lot of things along that line where it kind of towed the line between design and illustration, playing with typography and imagery. I didn't have any clear idea of like what I thought I'd be doing after. I was playing with the idea of freelance work, which I did a bit of after I graduated, but I don't know, even while I was in school, I started taking printmaking classes. I was looking through a book of prints at one point, and there was a print by Jasper Johns that I was really into. And I looked in the footnotes, and it said that it was an etching published at Universal Limited Art Editions, which is a print studio on Long Island.
Huh.
And I had never heard of it, and I saw that it was in Bayshore, which was not far from where I grew up. And at the time, I was studying in Philadelphia, but I'd be going back pretty much every summer to work summer jobs and then go back to school in the fall. So I had reached out, I think it was the summer after my sophomore year. I reached out to ULAE and was just like, I found you guys. I love what you do. I'd love to come by and just see what you guys are doing. If you need any help, I'd love to help. Really curious, but then also trying to find any end to anything that I could.
Sure.
And I got lucky. The people there were very welcoming and helpful and were like, hey, yeah, stop by. We'd love to show you around. I was a bit overzealous and I showed up like with my portfolio and all this different stuff because I didn't know what I would need. And I met with Bill Goldston, the director at the time, and he showed me around the studio. We talked about art and printmaking a bit. And then at the end, he was kind of just like, well, when can you start? And I was like, tomorrow? So I was just interning there a few days a week at first over the summer. Really, really liked what was going on there. I learned far more about printmaking just being at that studio than I ever did in school, even though I wasn't a printmaking major. And I kept showing up, if I had a holiday break over Christmas, go home, spend time with family, but also do as much time there as I could. Eventually they started paying me a little bit, at least to cover, gas, travel, expenses and things like that. And slowly the people there started taking me under their wing a bit, teaching me more, getting me involved with some of the projects. So by the time I graduated college, I still was entertaining the idea of illustration, but I don't know. I think my career focus at that point was already like really enjoying this printmaking, and I want to pursue this further. And I was lucky that when I graduated, they hired me on full time. I mean, at the bottom of the pecking order, obviously, and learned more and got more and more involved as I was there. But I don't know, kind of haven't looked back since.
Yeah, that's awesome though, because you've gotten to work with some pretty big names too, right?
Yeah, I guess an important thing to talk about is the fact that, what I do is considered collaborative printmaking. So the way studios like ULAE and Flying Horse, where I work now, operate is they usually act as publishers. You invite in artists you're excited to work with, and then it's a collaborative experience, not too different from like a music artist going to a recording studio. Like the musical artist has, songs they've written, whether they're fully fleshed out or not, and then they go into the studio and work with the producers and sound engineers to help make their vision a reality. So a lot of these artists that I've worked with haven't had a lot of experience in printmaking.
Are they mainly like painters and stuff like that, or?
A majority of them are painters, but not all of them. I've worked with sculptors and some artists a bit more on the conceptual side of things that don't particularly define their work by medium.
Let's define all of this for our listeners in case they know nothing. Like, okay, so you're saying printmaking, but it made me think when you said sculptors, like you can't make a print of a sculpture. And like a print making in a way for me is like you have a artwork and then you're just reproducing it and that's a print. But that's not necessarily what you're talking about.
No, yeah, I guess I should be more specific because what we do is we're creating originals with artists, but we're using print as a medium so that we can produce multiple.
When you say print too, like what type of presses are we talking about? We're not talking about digital, right? We're talking about like old school.
I mean, at times we'll use digital when it makes sense for specific projects, but more so, yeah, it's a lot of very traditional, outdated printmaking techniques. We're doing copperplate etchings,
Nice.
traditional lithography, both on limestone slabs and aluminum plates, wood cuts, linoleum cuts, those sort of traditional relief prints. So yeah, we're not in the business of reproducing art. We're more so using print as a unique medium for the artist. So, typically they might paint or sculpt or do any number of things. And then this is just another way for them to create work. So, I mean, a lot of them don't have experience with those techniques. Some of them do. I told you I got really inspired by those Jasper Johns prints, and he's known to really be a prolific and extremely talented printmaker in his own right. But some artists come with no print background whatsoever. So we work with them to help choose what techniques might be best for what they have envisioned.
Sure.
And I think that's where the collaborative part comes in. It's like, we're trying to have our hands not so visible in the end of the process. I think our impact is more in trying to guide the artist in the direction that's going to best capture what they're imagining. But it's inevitable in any kind of collaborative experience, though, that what one artist would do at one studio compared to at another studio, I feel like naturally based on the printmakers that are working there, the directors that are directing the studio, it's going to change the outcome of the piece. So even if the artist is trying to make the same piece at two different studios, I think the end result will be very different.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think what that illustration you gave of working in a recording studio, I think that's a great way to explain it, because you're right. The producer and mixers and everyone, they're going to have a lot of input as to how to get what the artist wants in the finished product, but the main part of it's going to be the musician. Yeah. So that makes sense. Wow.
I mean, that's something I've definitely had. I mean, because it's hard even trying to explain to your family what you do at a fine art print studio. I'm sure there's plenty of people that still think I just work at a print shop printing t-shirts or something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, we can tell the audience I'm Steven's technically his uncle, even though we're basically like cousins in a lot of ways. And I've known Steven for many years now, and today I'm learning a little bit more. I kind of had an idea, but I didn't really know as much as he's just talked to us about in the first 5 minutes or so. So that's really cool and interesting. I think it's awesome that you get to work in so many different mediums too, like you said, wood block, lithograph, on limestone and everything. That's really cool. What's one of your favorites that you work in?
I think copperplate etching is still my favorite technique to use. And I think a lot of that is because it's extremely malleable. The most traditional way to work in copperplate etching is to coat the surface of a piece of copper in a ground, as we call it. So that's just a protective layer we put on top of the copper. And then
when we say copper, we're talking about like a copper plate, like literally a flat piece of copper.
Yep. Yeah. We usually get most of our copper from roofing supply companies that do copper roofing and things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the most traditional way that people would probably imagine it ends up looking a lot like a pen and ink drawing. So you coat the plate with the ground, give the artist a scribe that is then used to remove the ground. So the artist is just drawing directly on the plate and essentially removing the ground where they draw and exposing that copper again.
They're scraping this ground off.
So then we take the copper plate, we put it in an acid bath that then eats away the copper wherever it's exposed. And now in that case, we clean the ground off and we'll take ink and we'll use a card to scrape the ink down into all those grooves in the plate and then clean the top surface of the plate. And then we could run it through the press with a sheet of paper on top and it'll transfer that image in. So it's, a very direct way of capturing that artist's gesture and permanently putting it into a plate that we could repeatedly print over and over and over again.
But if I'm not mistaken, yeah, go ahead.
No, you're good.
No, I was just going to say, and also the artist has to think about whatever they're scribing on that copper plate is a mirror image of how it's going to turn out, right?
Yeah, in most printmaking techniques, not all, but a lot of traditional printmaking, it is reversed when it prints. So if orientation of the composition is very important to them, they have to flip it before they make the work. And then especially if there's text involved in the work, you have to be very conscious because you have to write everything backwards or else it's not going to show up. But I think for me, what I like about etching is, like I said, it's very malleable. So you can do that drawing, but there's also ways to then scrape back into the plate and then burnish things away and remove image and then add back. So you could push it back and forth. It's very flexible because, copper is a very soft metal in reality. So you can handle it in any number of ways. You don't have to physically etch into it with acid. You can kind of beat it up and scratch at it and make what's called a dry point mark. You could add and remove and push and pull constantly until you have the plate the way you like it. I don't know. There's something I really like about that physical way of working. And then even the printing process on it's very physical and tactile. And I just get a lot of joy out of that.
Yeah, I feel like that lends itself more to drawing to kind of my style too, where I'm kind of constantly for a while at least, I'm looking back and forth. I'm changing things. I'm moving stuff around. I talk about it almost as if I'm sculpting with the lead or with the charcoal or whatever. And so you can do that more with the copper.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of painters that are really drawn to copperplate etching because of that, because you can kind of push it back and forth and it kind of just gets more and more interesting because, you can remove things completely with no evidence of it, but then also it's fun at times to leave a little evidence of what was there before and then work back on top of it, just like a lot of people will with a painting. You could do things like that with some other processes, but, I think.
Yeah. And then I'm
really
sure that some artists probably do like multiple plates too. Like you do one plate and then you do one on top of that.
Yeah. So in general, it's not always a rule of thumb, but more often than not, the way we're working is considered spot color. So in the end, every color you see on the print is usually from its own plate. We can potentially, if we're smart about how we're producing it, you might be able to space things out on the plate well enough that you could ink different colors into the same plate. But more often than not, each plate is its own color.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've done etchings usually aren't the most, I don't know, I'd say most etchings probably are 6 plates or less. Really, really high numbers of print runs usually lend itself more towards lithography or screen print. But I've done etchings that were at least 20, if not 30 colors. Not that many plates, but, multiple colors on plates that have added up to.
And then how many prints what's a minimum, or do you guys have a minimum? Like, hey, the minimum run is 20 or whatever. I don't know.
I mean, we don't really have a minimum. If we're doing the work to make a plate or a stone or a woodblock, usually it's like you might as well print an edition from it. You put all the work into it and it's repeatable.
Yeah.
But this past week I was working on an edition for an artist that I think is only going to be 5 to 10 for the edition size. But then we also have, ways of working within print to make unique pieces, which we do often. And a lot of times it's great because it's a way for us to keep the artist engaged while they're with us. Because usually the way it works is kind of like a residency. The artist comes out in for a limited amount of time and we work on a project, try to get as much done in that time as possible, and then they'll leave. Maybe they'll come back for another visit. But, it's very direct. It's not often that we're working long distance with artists, and usually
Have to be there.
yeah. I mean, they don't always have to, but I think we get the best results. And a lot of the processes, they do have to be there to work directly on the plates. But all the studios I've worked at have been fairly small edition sizes in general. I think the largest edition I've ever done was probably around 70. The studio I'm at right now, the largest editions we'll do is usually 40, which is for our members subscription, which is how we really keep the studio going.
So you guys have a subscription like Netflix. So like they come to your studio as many times they want in a certain period of time or whatever.
Well, the subscription's more for the collectors.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because as far as the artists that come out to work, it's all invitation based. It's, Theo Lotz, the director at the studio I'm at right now, is usually the one. He's going out finding new artists he wants to work with, whether that's him visiting galleries and studios, or a lot of times other artists we've worked with will recommend artists that they think would be great for our program. But the subscription is on the client side. So studio I'm at right now, we're part of the University of Central Florida. We're actually considered a research branch of the university. Because we're not teaching classes or anything. We're a kind of a research lab for artists to come and expand their practice within print. And our closest connection to the university is our internship program. So we have anywhere from 2 to 6 interns a semester usually coming through. So they get to be involved with the process from beginning to end. When they first start out, it's a lot of the less desirable tasks in the studio until they get trained and more experience and stuff. But by the end, we try to get them as involved in the production of the prints as possible.
And how long do those internships run?
A semester at a time. So we do 3 times a year. So we do a fall, spring, and summer semester for the internship. But so we're mostly self-funded. The university does provide us with studio space and access to their facilities team that, so if we have issues with
The AC, whatever.
AC or anything, we have people that come and do custodial work and stuff for the studio. But we don't get an operating budget from the university, so we have to bring in our own income for that. So we are not for profit, part of the university, but our biggest source of funding for the studio right now is our subscription. So it's limited to 40 members, and there's like a flat fee for the subscription for the year. And then at the end of the year, they get a portfolio of 3 prints. They don't know what those prints will be, but it's mostly presented as, buying into the subscription, you're buying into supporting us and, what we're trying to do within the arts in Orlando. And they also get access to the artist while they're visiting. So we'll usually have artist talks one evening while the artist is there, and they'll do a little presentation. The members will get to see what the artist has been working on while they've been here for the residency. So there's, anywhere from, a minimum of 3 artists a year, because we need at least 3 for that portfolio, but usually closer to 5 or 6 artists a year, I'd say we bring in. So they don't know what they're going to get at the end of the year, but they get a portfolio, they get access to the artists. We have a nice event at the end of the year to present that portfolio at the end of the year and kind of thank them for supporting us and keeping things going.
Yeah.
And I think
That sounds like fun.
Yeah. And I think one of the biggest benefits of that kind of business model of that brings in enough money for us to operate throughout the year. any other prints that we sell, because we don't only do the prints for the membership, but any other prints we could sell for the year just goes back into the studio for, covering salaries, allowing us to maybe bring more people onto the team and build up that way, or new equipment, that sort of stuff. But having that membership business model definitely takes a lot of the pressure off of feeling like we need to make choices based on, how financially viable it could be. So, it allows us to choose artists at any level in their career, younger artists to far more established artists that might be able to command a much higher price for their work. But then even while the artists are there, we have to make far less decisions based on like, is this financially viable? We can try our best to make it, whatever is going to get us to that finish line of what the artist wants to achieve.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. That's a great model. That sounds like fun. I'm sure it's a pretty penny for the membership, but that sounds like that would be a cool thing to be a part of.
Yeah, it's a decent amount of money, especially because we try our best to get, at least one or two really well established artists for the portfolio every year. And then maybe one or two of the artists are some younger artists that we're just excited about and we see a future for. But in general, it's expensive, but it's usually we aim for it to be like you're really getting a bargain by doing the portfolio. Because buying each of those prints individually probably would cost more.
So they're investing in the arts and in your in your studio, but they're getting pretty, not just cool artwork back, but they're getting quite an investment too. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Win.
I think a lot of the members too, the events and access to the artist is like just as much a value for them as the prints in the end of the year. Like they get to see behind the curtain a bit and see how an artist works, not just see the end result. And I think that's one of the biggest benefits for the interns also. Like they get to be a part of a professional studio, kind of see how things operate on that end. But then when we have artists in for the residency, I feel like it's a great experience for interns to see what it may be like, at least for certain type of careers in the arts afterwards, and how a professional artist tends to work.
Yeah, I think that's a really important aspect. And that's what we were talking about a lot on one of our last podcasts. Is that's really a heart that I have for this podcast too, is that I want us to kind of give a little bit of a peek into the window of what the art world is like for those that have been doing it for a while, and for young artists to see.
Yeah, I definitely feel like being lucky to work with so many different artists throughout my career so far, you definitely see that there's no one way to do something.
Yeah.
Every artist works differently, and there's certain things that feel consistent across the board, and it kind of gets back to what you were saying about how you're feeling about your work and your artist statement lately. Is I feel like most of the artists we work with, and maybe it's why we're drawn to them, is have a consistent authenticity to themselves, and I think that might be a hard thing to find, especially for a lot of young artists, like thinking that they need to be this, that, or the other thing. But I think in reality, the most attractive thing at times is when you see something that just feels authentic. It's, true to that person.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what I was talking about with Marlita Hill. One of our other episodes, that's I think a huge thing that even like not that I'm a huge artist or anything, but I've been doing art for quite a few years, and I'm just now kind of starting to really get that I think young artists when they start out, are way too focused on the product per se. This is the type of either this is the type of artist I want to be. They're looking at someone else, or they're saying this is the type of art I want to produce. I want to do work like that. And I almost think that it's more important to not think about that. It's more important to think about, okay, who are you and what do you bring to the table? And maybe it's not going to look exactly like you think you want to look, but your artwork is going to be viable, and your artwork is going to actually speak to people, and you're going to have more success, I think, when you are more honed in onto who you are and what you bring to the table. Because like you said, that's what people are going to be attracted to. People are going to be attracted to people that have come alive, people that have that honesty in their work. So it's figuring that out. And like you said, like I want this to be a window into artists that have been maybe a little bit more established so that younger ones can kind of get a feel. But at the same time, the opposite is true. Like you said, there's no really one way to do anything. So I don't want young artists to start thinking, oh, I want to be like that or I have to do that. Because that's the trap that I've fallen into a lot, I know, in my career. And I think you're just going to be happiest when you're doing what you want to do and learning how to make that work.
I think that's exactly right. I mean, there's so many ways to do art, and I think people get a little too trapped also in a very specific idea of what being an artist is or what a career in the arts is, because it's hard at times when students come to me for guidance of like, what should be the next step if I want to do this, that, or the other thing. I mean, my biggest bit of advice is usually find the things that are interesting to you, explore those things, and don't be afraid to open any doors. I don't think I, in a million years, would have imagined that I'd be doing what I'm doing. And when I started interning at ULAE, I wasn't any more talented or qualified than, a large majority of other people that I was in school with, probably. But, I think I took the initiative to reach out to that studio. And then I put in the time. I think genuine curiosity is going to keep you motivated for longer, but then also exploring those curiosities can lead to anything. I had no idea that printmaking, the way I'm doing it now, was a potential career path at all. And if I didn't reach out, I wouldn't be where I am now. And I know I've always been a hard worker. It's not that I'm saying I'm not talented, but there's so many talented people out there that more than anything, I feel like it's about finding the things you are interested in, pursuing those things, and, knocking on as many doors as you can, figuratively, because you never know which one's going to open. There's no reason I should have had that internship at ULE over so many other people. I just happened to be there, right time, right place. And once I got my foot in the door, I worked hard.
Right. Yeah, that's totally right. I love that because, we've talked about this before too. Yeah, it's I feel like artists, I know myself, I tend to just think and I ruminate on things probably too much. When you do, there's acting. You got to act, and out of that action will come things. Out of that movement, a lot of things will happen, and things that you didn't expect, like you said. But as long as you're moving towards things that you're interested, like you said, that curiosity, I think you'll be much more happier.
Yeah,
going towards what you think you should be going towards necessarily. Oh, hey man. I love what you said so far. Can we back up though? Can we back up a
Sure.
little bit to way back, like when you were growing up? When you were growing up, what type of art were you drawn to? No pun intended. Were you drawn to visual arts, performing arts? Or did you add at all? Were you mostly sports, or what type of a kid were you?
I mean, all of the above, I guess. Early on, I mean, I think a big part of what sends you on any trajectory in life is, especially when you're young, getting positive feedback from the people in your life. So, the funny kids getting, positive feedback and laughs out of their family, they're going to continue to push that, push that, push that. And I feel like it's the same for me with the arts, where I must have showed some aptitude towards it in my early life, and people pushed it. But I mean, even your wife, my aunt, who grew up more of like a cousin to me because we were much closer in age, she was always older than me. But, growing up, she was always drawing and painting. And I saw a lot of that when I'd visit them. And my parents always supported and pushed the arts for me. I mean, I think early on, it's whatever you're into when you're younger. It's when you realize that you can capture an image, it's whatever you're interested at the moment. So, when we're growing up and going to church and being young and not wanting to be there, I feel like my parents were like, hey, bring your drawing pad. And then I made friends there who, one of my friends was a skateboarder and was really into skateboarding. And we would spend a lot of time drawing characters and logos and stuff from different skateboarding companies. Or, Calvin and Hobbes comics were really a lot of fun and interesting to me. So I've copied so many of those. I think early on it's just like copying the things that get you excited. So I feel like there's a lot of time, using it as a way to keep me quiet and busy during church when I was young. But then also, my parents got me in plenty of classes, summer classes, drawing, painting, that sort of stuff. But even music, I think music in a lot of ways, at times I feel like maybe I'm even more moved by music than visual arts. And I think maybe just I had more of an aptitude towards visual arts. That's why I ended up in the visual arts. But, I've always really enjoyed music too. And I played piano briefly when I was young, but it wasn't self-motivated enough to keep going with that. But then once I got into middle school, I joined the, school band, and I was playing French horn all through middle school and high school.
Did you like that?
Yeah, I did. I did a lot. And I almost ended up playing in college because there were some schools that were like, even though you're not going to school for music, I think I was lucky that I played the French horn because it's such a niche instrument. There's not a lot of people that play it. And I was good enough, but I really wasn't great. But because there weren't that many French horn players, I had a lot of opportunities. Like I did get like all state, in the all state band, or maybe not all state, but all county. And then I did have some offers of like, hey, I think of Rutgers University in New Jersey, it was kind of like, if you play for the pep band, we'll give you a little bit more money to come to the school. Well, I didn't end up going that way. And I think I'm glad I didn't. As fun as it may have been, I think that would have been a whole nother commitment and distraction, I think, from what I was trying to do. I don't actively make music so much anymore, but it's always been something I enjoyed.
Mm-hmm. So you say that if you think you'd gone that way, would have kind of been a distraction and from what you were trying to do. So obviously you were at that point going to college, you were trying to get into the visual arts more.
Yeah.
So what kind of nudged that decision to not go the music route and more the visual route?
Well, I don't think I ever had enough skill in music. I always enjoyed it, but I don't think it was anything that I was particularly great at. And I do really, really enjoy the visual arts. And maybe it's just that level of not feeling like I don't know, maybe there's more mystery in music to me than visual arts because I didn't feel like I had any expertise in it. That makes it a little bit more exciting at times. But
so a question though, would people say, hey, you're really good at it? Or not necessarily?
For what, visual arts?
No, sorry, the music, like the French horn.
I mean, I had people pushing me, my band instructors and stuff. I don't think I ever felt like they were like, hey, kid, you really got something. You should pursue this.
Because I'm thinking about it because I thought about this too with myself. Growing up, I would do impressions and I would kind of do acting type of things, and people would say, you should be an actor. And of course I would have loved to, like, as far as, like Hollywood and blah, 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 blah. But I always poo-pooed it, like, okay, yeah, they're just being nice. Like, everyone wants to be an actor. But years go by and I kind of realize, not that I'm saying I could have been anything great, but I'm just saying, like, I think you kind of have to listen to those people growing up more than you think. Like, I shouldn't have poo-pooed that, because maybe just the simple fact that I wanted to do that and I had maybe some talent, who knows where I would have gotten. But I don't know, for myself, I feel like I should have listened to those voices more, or my hopes and dreams more, instead of just trying to think practically. So I was kind of wondering if that was kind of the same thing. Like, you really would have loved to go the French horn route, but you were like, I'm really not that great. But it sounds like it was kind of more of you had your feet on both sides. Like you were in the French form, but you were also into the visual arts, and you just felt more secure in the visual arts.
Yeah, a little bit more secure, and I do really enjoy it. I don't mean to
Oh, yeah. No,
bring that down at
I
all.
don't think that you're saying that you're not.
No, I don't. I always
Probably not the
enjoyed
thing.
visual arts. I always enjoyed
Yeah.
doing visual arts more. Um,
Yeah.
but no, I don't regret not following the music route. I don't think that was right for me. But I mean, I did a number of things all throughout my early years in school and stuff. I did the school plays and musicals and stuff. Not that I was a particularly talented singer or anything, but it was still fun. And then I played sports, mostly volleyball when I was in middle school and high school, but then I would do, winter and spring track and stuff. That was mostly just a way to have something to do and be with your friends and be active a bit. But yeah, I think the arts were always more attractive to me. But I like the things you're saying, I feel like it's always kind of that push and pull between the practical and the romantic ideas. And I think even once you're in a career within the arts, you realize, I feel lucky to be in the career I'm in, but any job's a job still. It could be extremely stressful and trying at times, but, I feel lucky that most of that stress is usually me putting anxieties and stressors on myself of just trying to, I guess, produce at a specific level. I'd much rather be in that situation if I'm the one putting the stress on myself than, my boss or the job itself.
Right. That's not sustainable, really.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and music you said you really love. That kind of brings me to one of my questions is what really inspires you? I guess in your art form, but you could just mean in life too. Do you get inspired by music that you hear? Do you get inspired by other artists that you see? Like, I guess what's a big motivating factor for you? Like, I guess, let me qualify. Like, for me, when I'm painting and I'm in the zone, it usually helps. Like, I'm listening to some music that really sounds romantic and cheesy, but it really speaks to my soul, kind of. And so it's a combination of that and what I'm doing too that I really am able to get into that deep place.
No, I totally understand that. And I feel like, I don't know, inspiration for me, I think does come from a lot of other artists and music and things like that. And I think something I've learned about myself, which kind of led me to kind of describing myself more as a craftsman than an artist specific, is I feel like I less so have a specific voice that I need to put out in the world. I think a lot of the creative gratification that I get comes from creative problem solving, which I think has made me
Yeah.
great for the career I'm in, of working collaboratively with other people. Because it's really easy for me to, you know, if I'm working with another artist, like take a look at their work and get inspired by what they're doing, and then try to imagine how I can bring something to that maybe they haven't thought of just because they, don't have the experiences that I have. I think music's always inspiring to me. And I think at times when I talk to people who struggle to embrace or accept abstract art on the visual side of things, I feel like music's a really great way to kind of maybe get people a little bit more on board with it or understand abstract art in the visual sense of music's not literal most of the time. The lyrics can be, but especially if you talk just on the instrumental side of things, it's all about abstract sounds that are instilling some sort of emotion or feeling, or like setting the stage for like, what the artist is trying to convey, whether is super abstract or if they want to tell a specific story and know that if they use, minor chords versus major chords, they're going to get a different feeling from it. But, I think a lot of people don't realize how much they already appreciate abstract art because they enjoy music. And I think a lot of people are just accustomed to, the possibilities of the visual arts representing things within reality, that
Sure.
they kind of dismiss abstract visual art.
Yeah. No, that's really, this isn't a visual medium podcasting, but I'm nodding my head because I've never heard that but put that way. But that's a great illustration of abstract art, kind of like music. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it because the artist is more of trying to show you what to feel. Like a lot of, say, I'm thinking about like soundtracks to films. There's not words necessarily, but there's notes and things that are trying to elicit a certain emotional response from the listener. Because you work in the printmaking scene with artists that are current these days, you're probably more in tune with like what's going on in the art world than say me. Um, who are some of your favorite artists right now that you enjoy? I don't want you to get you into trouble, especially with ones that you work with. They're like, "Hey, listen, this podcast, and you said that I wasn't your favorite." But I don't know if you can speak to like who do you really enjoy, either visually, like just you enjoy their aesthetic, or you enjoy working with them, or both.
Yeah, I mean, any number of their artists. In a lot of ways, I also don't know that I'm all that more in tuned with the art world than you. I mean, I guess just because the artists that I work with, maybe, but I feel like I've been further and further disconnected the longer I've been in it. But I think that's more of, as you get older, you kind of feel like you don't have your finger on the pulse of what's exciting at the moment. I'm probably not giving myself enough credit, but
No, I know what you mean. Like you're kind of just going to work because you go to work, and that's who you interact with. But outside of work, not necessarily quite as much. Yeah.
I also think it's just like life gets busy, and the more you have going on in your life, the harder it is to keep up with certain things. But um, right now, an artist that I'm working with that I'm really excited about is Matt Bollinger. Um, he's a painter, but he's also an animator. Um, does amazing animations that are essentially stop motion animations, but paintings. So he'll do a painting and adjust that painting for each frame and then rephotograph it. So it's kind of a endlessly, you know, changing painting.
Hmm.
Really beautiful things. But his use of color, and shapes to set moods within his paintings is really, really exciting to me. And then he comes from middle America, and that's a lot of what he is portraying in his images. He also has a background in creative writing when he was in college, and I think that comes across a lot in his paintings. So he is a figurative painter, but he's not.
Yeah, I'm looking at some of his work right now, and yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, I think it.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just gonna. I feel like now knowing that after working with him and talking with him, now knowing that he has a background in creative writing makes a lot of sense to me. Because it feels like each one of his paintings are kind of trying to tell as much a story of that person's life within this one moment. So it is very narrative, but it's not overly informative or anything. It's not telling this elaborate story. It's more hinting at, this person's life and this moment in time. But I also think it's very figurative, the work, but his use of color and light within the paintings does start to lean on the side of abstract in ways where like he's creating these kind of abstract compositions of light and color within this figurative painting. That's really beautiful.
Yeah. No, I was about to say that too. His use of light is not like his subject matter is figurative, but his use of light is not realistic per se, or it's this kind of weird abstract use of light, but it comes out really cool in positive and negative space too, kind of. And
Yeah.
yeah, and his colors are very, like you said, it's interesting. They're almost, oh, what's the word? He doesn't use a lot of color, like almost like mono, but I don't know how to explain it. There is color, but there's second of all, too, like he uses a lot of dark scenes, which you don't really see on a lot of paintings. A lot of paintings go with almost like photography where you need to have light. But he creates a lot of these either kind of dark or shadowy scenes with this a surrealistic use of light in a way, and kind of planar too, like these different planes that the light is on too. It's very interesting, yeah.
I mean, the way the light breaks up the figures and the scene can kind of feel like some like, you know, Cubist paintings. But it's not the same. I feel like a lot of the Cubists, like it was the line work. It was less about the light. Like he has a more naturalistic, although exaggerated use of light. I definitely feel like you could see kind of influence from, you know, some of those artists.
Like a Picasso or something
Yeah.
in there, and a little bit of surrealism too, slash mixed with a little bit of still life too, like a little bit of fruit here and there, or some other object in the painting that looks very, yeah, still life-esque. That's very cool.
Yeah.
Huh.
And when you have some time, you should look at his animations because they're
Yeah.
definitely inspiring. And he does work in serial too at times of like, he's done some, I don't know if you'd call them comic books, but he's played around with telling stories more similar to his paintings within drawing too, where it's like frame by frame.
Yeah. So kinda like a graphic novel somewhat?
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. So I don't have my finger to the pulse of the art world much. Is he kind of a well-known one that's out there and people are, not that I'm trying to say anything about him or not, or was he kind of one of the younger ones that your team was like, "Hey, we really see something in this guy. Let's work with him."
I mean, he's definitely pretty well established, but I think still like early on in his career. Like I think he's on the rise with his career for sure.
Where's he based out of?
Ithaca right now, Ithaca, New York.
Who is like, now, I don't think this will get you into any trouble. So who was one of your favorites? Well, obviously he's like one of the kind of the newer ones, the up and coming artists that you see. What's another one of your most favorite people that you worked with?
I think probably one of the most exciting things that I ever got to do is work with Martin Perrier. He's a sculptor, very well established, and you know, I think one of the most impactful shows early on in my art career, like when I was in college, was I got to see a retrospective of his work at MoMA while I was in college, and I was blown away. I mean, it kind of hit a lot of my interests, you know, on the art side, but also on the craft side, because he is a pretty traditionally trained woodworker and uses a lot of very traditional woodworking techniques within his work, which was also exciting to me because I did a lot of that in college too.
Now, when you say woodworking, do you mean like in college you were doing like, you were making a cabinet, or you were doing like sculpture work, or what type of woodworking?
It was more furniture based than sculpture specific, but since it was, you know, it was a woodworking degree within an art school, it would probably be what's considered more in like the fine craft woodworking, where it's, you know, a lot of training in traditional hand techniques. And, you know, while it focused a lot on furniture building, it definitely was looking at it as its own form of fine art or fine craft. So, I mean, I think for me, it was so new to me that like it was a lot of like the technical training that just really got me excited. I mean, I think another reason why printmaking's been great for me is like I could get really excited about nuances of techniques and stuff. And so woodwork was the same way for me.
If I tell me to, or do you mean more like you get excited and kind of what this program was focused on was kind of like the hand, literally like the hand meets the tool meets the wood. Like in other words, what are the techniques of using these tools? Probably more hand tools rather than power tools.
Yeah, and I think it's just like it could be really exciting to me to understand why things are a certain way and why things work with a certain material but not another material. And you know, like with woodworking, you kind of have to start to learn how, you know, everything starts with the tree. So it's like the way the tree grows
Mm.
informs
Hmm.
how the material is going to work. the grain runs in a certain direction and it's stronger in one direction than another. So the specific type of wood you use might dictate what its end use is and if it's more practical for this application or that application, but then also what direction you're cutting the wood for that piece, because if it's going to need to support a lot of weight, you need to know you're using it in a way that structurally makes the most sense. But I think that an intersection though of like the very practical side of what's dictating it, but then also taking that and being like, well, where can we push that now? Which is more the fine art side of it. And I think which still keeps me excited with printmaking too, of like there's certain limitations that like you just can't do certain things. But I think in reality there's far less limitations than there are possibilities. And sometimes limitations are nice. Having like a little box that you have to work within can bring more creativity out of you than if the possibilities feel completely endless.
Yeah, Steven has done a lot of cool woodworking skills projects at his own house. You redid your bathroom, if I'm not mistaken, and you made like this countertop with wood and a lot of other materials, right? So he's very much a handyman, but more than that, like you said, a craftsman. Have you done anything lately, like at home or not at work?
I mean, I'm just starting to work on a project that I haven't really done anything, at least for my own pleasure as far as woodworking, in a long time. But there's a book publisher and a woodworker out of Kentucky that I've always found really fascinating. His name's Christopher Schwartz, and he runs Lost Art Press. And I could get a little nerdy reading some of those books about woodworking and stuff, but he's got this small pocket-sized book that he put out called Building a Chair from Bullshit. That I recently read, and I was like, I feel like this is just a perfect way to jump back into something that feels a little bit less, I don't know. The whole idea of the book is making traditional woodworking more accessible to more people and realizing that not everyone has access to awesome lumber yards with the most unique types of wood, or the best access to tools and equipment. So the whole premise of the book was like, I want to build a very traditional hand-built stick chair, but only from materials and tools that you could get from like big box stores like Home Depot and things like that, because he wants it to be accessible. And it I think he's a great writer and can make what seems like very boring topics really interesting. But there's also something about the approachability of that book and that project that I've started planning on. I've been getting tools together and materials just this week, actually. So I'm gonna build a chair, and it's not gonna have a particular amount of creativity. I'm literally just following his plans, but it feels like a fun and easy way to get back into that side of.
That sounds very cool. What type of wood do you think you're going to use?
I mean, in that case, it's kind of all about just what you could get at a big box store and what's best for it. So like for like legs on a chair, you need them to be really sturdy and structural. So you want very straight grain and from a very sturdy wood. So like his recommendation is going to the tool aisle actually and finding replacement handles for like post hole diggers and things like that. Because it's kind of, a fairly affordable way to get really strong straight grain wood that would be great for the legs. But then for the seat of the chair, he's like, we're going to use pine because that's what's available for, a big, wide, thick piece of wood. Get a 2x12 piece of pine.
Yeah.
It's very much about what's available. And he's like, in the end, you definitely just want to paint this chair because it's going to be an ugly mix of random things. But
very cool though. And what's his name again?
Christopher Schwartz. I think it's Schwarz, I believe.
Okay. So no T in there.
No
not
T.
words and Schwarz.
Yeah.
Huh. And what's the name of that book?
I could be getting it wrong, but it's something along the lines of building a chair from bullshit.
Okay, let me see. Let me see if I can look this up just to verify. Hang on real quick. Let me see if I can find it.
If you look on Lost Art Press is his publishing company. It's probably an easy way to find it.
Yeah, there it is. Lost Art Press. Build a chair from bull. Yeah, and then it bleeps out the shit part. Wow, it looks like there's even a PDF version online that you can just get.
Yeah, actually, I mean, him and his company, the people who work there, they definitely have really awesome views on, you know, publishing and woodworking, and all the books that they write and or publish are available for sale, but a big chunk of them they also put up for free as PDFs for people that want to have access to it but don't have the money to buy the books.
So
So
cool.
yeah,
Huh.
they're awesome. They seem like awesome people.
Started out visual arts, music too. Got into printmaking, which is more, in your mind, a craftsman type field.
I mean, it's both. I don't mean to bring down printmaking as an art form, but I think it's more about where I'm at as an artist. Like I feel more like a craftsman than an artist, but that's just because I'm not actively putting much of my own voice or work out in the world at the moment.
Sure. If you don't mind, can you oh gosh, my brain isn't working too well this afternoon. I'm sorry. Can you can you define? That's the word. Define. Sorry, can you define craftsman in the way that you mean it?
I mean, I think it's just, that my practice at the moment is more focused on craft and creative problem solving and concept, I guess.
Okay, do you speak to craft? Like, what do you mean by craft?
How and why you're making things, I guess, on the more practical side in a lot of ways.
Like the tools and
Technique, playing around, like within printmaking, there's specific ways you're supposed to do things. But I get really excited when artists come in with an idea that forces me to think outside the box, where they'll be like, can we do something like this? And a lot of times that comes from not having full knowledge of the process and a bit of, you know, their lack of experience can also actually bring a lot to the table because they may not be, confined by the traditional ideas of what those print processes are because they haven't worked as much in them. But then that could let us think of them in different ways. I guess one project recently that I can talk about that seems like a good example of that is there's another artist we worked with, phenomenal sculptor and installation artist, Tara Donovan, who a lot of her work is taking mundane, simple objects and finding ways to elevate them to a much, much grander level. But I think it came out of COVID and kind of being forced to be at home and having to work smaller scale. She started doing these drawings, or what she was calling drawings, that was just taking like aluminum window screen and manipulating it. So with tweezers and knives and scissors and, pinching together sections of the screen and then clipping sections out to create these patterns within the screen. So very like simple, elegant rhythms and patterns that she kind of created within these screens. And then she wanted to start doing that in print. And, my director, Theo, went up and visited her studio, saw these drawings, and she was working on printing some of them herself. She is a printmaker too. She's had printing presses in her studios throughout the years and done a lot of her own prints. So when we were talking to her and trying to get her to come down and work with us, she had these screen drawings she was working with. I was very interested in making prints of those, but materials really important to her. I think the most direct translation of that material was very important to her. So she didn't just want to, take these drawings that she's already made and photograph them or digitize them in a way to make a screen print or a photo litho plate or something along those lines. She wanted it to be as direct a translation as possible. So in her studio, she was taking the screens and just taking a relief roller and rolling ink on top of the screens and then running them through the press with a piece of paper on top to, transfer the ink. So it's like a very direct translation from the screen to the paper because it was printed directly from it. But the problem she was having was the aluminum screens don't hold up well to pressure. So she'd get like one, maybe two impressions, and then the screen's falling apart. So it doesn't really make sense to make a print then because all the work she put into making that drawing gets destroyed so quickly. So it's better just to preserve the screen itself and sell that as a unique piece instead of a print. So she was trying to find ways to work from that in a more productive way, I guess, more reproducible without destroying the original. And we went through a lot of different iterations where we were trying to find ways to just stabilize the screen. So, mount it to a board with epoxy and any number of different ways of just printing from the screen the same way she was, like relief printing, preserving the screen. And we weren't having much more success than she was having. But then, which actually came from a suggestion from an intern at one point, we ended up down a path of, okay, can we mold or cast this potentially, or, make it more structural, more sturdy. And then we ended up playing with a lot of different materials and ended up taking a product called Sintra, which is an expanded PVC plastic. So it's just like a plastic board, but it's got tiny, tiny little air holes in it. So it's very lightweight plastic board that has been picked up by a lot of printmakers, especially as like a low-tech, fun way to be able to make prints at home because people will carve into them like a linoleum cut or draw into it with a pen even. Like it's sturdy enough, but it's also soft enough that you can just draw on it with a pen and it'll leave an impression. And then you could print from that, whether it's relief or intaglio, like an etching. So we'd known about that product, but then we played with a bunch of other products and we started just running pieces of screen through the press with the plastic on top to emboss the screen into it. And where we ended up was with the Sintra, but we used a bunch of different materials. But so we essentially ended up making an etching or an intaglio, technically not an etching, but any print where you're printing from below the surface, like an engraving or an etching or something like that, is considered an intaglio process. So we ended up dialing in technique for just taking her original drawings, running them through the press to embed that texture into the Sintra that then we could card the ink into and wipe the surface clean and then print from that. So it's things like that that get me excited. And I guess it's about craft, but it's also extremely creative on the problem solving side of it where, it's in a lot of ways very much like a traditional etching we'd make, but, we had to find a different way to translate what she was hoping to do. And those are the things that could be a lot of fun of just finding new ways to do things. Well, it's not that different than a lot of other things, but it was still a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm kind of like that too. I don't work with, but I enjoy that stuff too. I like figuring out how to make things work. Yeah, so I totally get that. And that sounds like a lot of fun. That sounds like probably there's days where you come home and you're like, I can't believe that's my job.
Yeah, I mean, those sorts of things are the really things that keep me excited and engaged. Like the production side of printmaking, when it's like, all right, we have an approved finished product that we developed with the artist. Now it's time to produce that product. That's not necessarily the most fun. It's still rewarding, like when you see it all coming together, but that could be extremely tedious. And the things that keep me going is like working with the artist and that creative problem solving and being like, never thought of that before.
Is there anything that you want to promote of sorts, of your own work or of the studio that you work with, or anything coming up that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of my own work currently that I'm putting out there. I don't even really have an active Instagram or anything that anyone could follow. But yeah, I mean, Flying Horse Editions, where I'm working right now, you can follow them on Instagram. You can go to the website, check out the work we've done in the past. I mean, we're always excited to just, show people what we do and talk about printmaking stuff, regardless of whether you're, looking to purchase work or not. It's fun to talk to people and kind of educate people on, side of the weird side of what we do in the arts with the fine art printmaking.
Very cool. Do you know, there's probably not many of shops like yours around, even though you spoke about two, one on Long Island and one there in Florida. Do you know if there's very many around the U.S. that do what you guys do?
I mean, it's definitely a small group, but there's definitely a strong group of studios throughout the country. ULAE in New York, where I worked, there's several other studios in New York, in Brooklyn and Manhattan and stuff, like Two Palms and Lower East Side Press and 10 Grand Press in Brooklyn, the Neiman Center, plenty of small presses like that in New York. Even New Mexico, where you come from, in Albuquerque, has one of the strongest programs for training people in traditional lithography, and they also work as a print publisher too, and that's Tamarind Press out of Albuquerque.
Is that through the university there, through UNM?
They are
Or they're a separate entity?
They are a separate entity. I think they are associated with the university now, and maybe have been at other times throughout their existence.
Mhm.
But they are a separate entity. But I do think they may offer, like, while you're doing training at Tamarind, you
Sure.
might also be able to get your master's within printmaking at the university. I can't speak to specifically what they have set up right now, but there's plenty of small presses. There's Crown Point Press in San Francisco, Gemini in LA. A lot of these started around the same time. ULAE, Gemini, Crown Point, and Tamarind kind of were at the forefront of the kind of collaborative printmaking renaissance in the United States in like the late 50s, early 60s and on.
I was about to ask when that was. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, the traditional printmaking techniques definitely lost a bit of following as more, and better reproduction techniques came out throughout the time with, photographic reproduction and different techniques that,
Yeah.
but I think it's kind of the nature
Yeah.
within the arts is like, as other technologies become obsolete, then the artists grab those and like, well, what can we do with that? And then they, take these techniques that used to be commercial and find new ways to play with them that, becomes more fine art oriented.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I guess if I had one last question, what are you doing besides outside of the art world that you're excited about these days?
Oof.
If there is anything.
Yeah, I mean, the woodworking thing I'm just getting back into, but then I think just on a day-to-day thing of like, as far as getting joy, I think me and Elena, my wife, we really enjoy cooking and, just taking time to make fun meals together and stuff and share them with other people too. So I think, outside,
You've always been very good at that.
yeah, it's fun. We like it. I mean, you too. I'm always trying to capture Sam's salsa and guacamole and whatnot.
So our listeners know Steve and Elaine, they're very good cooks. They've always had a very good palate. We don't lack good food when we're with them. So, and good drinks too. Steven likes to mix some fine cocktails. He's usually experimenting with or has made some new one, and it's usually very, very good.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Yeah.
All right, man. Well, thank you very much.
Anytime. I'd love to talk to you again.
All right. Well, I won't keep you anymore, but say hi to Elena for us.
I will.
Oh, for the Love of Art with Sam Bishop, produced by Sam Bishop. Theme music and incidental music by Arct Music. To find out more, go to sambishopworks.com. If you like what you heard today, please like and subscribe and share us. Thank you for joining us.